Hi, I'm Dina Rose from It's Not About Nutrition. I'm really glad to be talking to the Replay community. Today we're talking about how to teach children eating habits. Before I get started on talking about how to teach your kids eating habits, I want to talk about the fact that there are only 3 habits that translate nutrition into behavior. When I travel around the country, I'm always surprised by the fact that if I ask people to talk to me about nutrition, they're pretty well versed. They might not know the ins and outs of omega-3 fatty acids, but when I ask them what the habits are that they want to teach their kids, people kind of stumble and stammer. And my guess is if I asked you what the eating habits were, you'd feel that way too. But you know what? It's not your fault. We just don't have a dialogue in our culture about eating habits. There are only 3 habits that translate nutrition into behavior, and they are proportion, variety, and moderation. Now, I did not make these habits up. People always ask me that question. It turns out that I learned about these eating habits on the USDA website when I was investigating the old food pyramid. Remember that one? It was a pyramid that had the grains at the bottom and the oils at the top. So the idea behind the food pyramid were these 3 habits: proportion, variety, and moderation, but the USDA thought that these tools were really just for educators and not for the public. That was kind of like my aha moment, because I thought if we talk to the public about these 3 habits, teaching them or putting them into practice becomes a lot clearer. So the first habit is proportion. It's eating healthier food more frequently than eating all the other kinds of food. A lot of people think about this as balance, but the reason I don't like to use the word balance is because it's gotten used in lots of different ways. Sometimes people use the word balance when they want to say, oh, I just don't eat that very frequently, or sometimes they mean balance when they want to talk about portion size. Oh, I didn't dive into a chocolate cake yesterday. Proportion is a much more specific idea, and it's just about what you eat overall. Do you eat the healthiest foods more frequently than the less healthy foods? And for kids, proportion translates into, do they eat the healthiest foods more than the so-called child-friendly foods like chicken nuggets or pizza or mac and cheese? For children, these child-friendly foods are what I call the at-least foods. Parents, you know what I'm talking about. It's mac and cheese, and you say, well, I wish my child weren't eating that, but at least it has calcium. Or the chicken nuggets, which you wish your kid was eating like a roast chicken instead, and you say, but at least it has protein. So anytime we're making exceptions for the food, as many times as we're saying at least, then we know we're not in the healthiest food category. So that's the essence of proportion, and we'll get back to that in a little bit. The second habit is variety. So most of us know what variety means, but the place that trips parents up is that we tend to think about variety as meaning new foods. So parents always ask me how they can get more variety into their kids' diets when their kids won't eat anything new. And I always answer that variety actually means different, not new. And so if you think about creating different menus from day to day, that is actually variety, and believe it or not, that will lay the foundation for introducing new foods down the road. And the final habit, I have to say, is the trickiest one. It's moderation. And moderation is a way of thinking about portion size. But if we think about what portion size really is, it's really about eating the right amount. And if we think about what that means, it's really eating the right amount for you at any given time. So it's eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full, but it also means not eating because you're bored, sad, or lonely. The problem with thinking about nutrition instead of thinking about habits, like putting nutrition first and habits second, is that we inadvertently end up teaching our kids exactly the wrong habits than the ones that we want to teach them. And the most obvious example that I can come up with is when we think about the habit of variety. Most parents I know wish their kids would eat a wider range of foods, and yet if you look at what parents are feeding their kids, they're feeding them a small set of go-to foods that get the job done. Of course, there's no problem with trying to get the job done. We all want to get out of the kitchen, and we all want to have dinner go somewhat successfully. But here's the problem. Imagine that your child has, let's say, 5 eating opportunities in the day. So there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and 2 snacks. Sometimes there's 3 snacks. Most parents settle on a set of foods for breakfast and lunch and for snacks that are essentially the same from day to day. So there might be some changes, like you might do pancakes one day and waffles the next day, but basically there's sort of 3 or 4 foods that we use every day as our go-to for breakfast and for lunch and for snack. And so then when we get to dinner, which is right like the big daddy of the day, it's the nutrition meal of the day, that's where we fight with our kids. And that's one of the reasons why parents are always talking to me about dinner. How can we get dinner to be more successful? So let's think about this from your child's perspective. So there's 5 eating opportunities a day, and your child is in the habit of knowing that the 3 or 4 snacks and meals are going to be foods that he or she is comfortable with and knows what to expect. And then comes along dinner. So what's the habit? The habit is most meals are the foods that I expect. It is normal to eat a monotonous diet, and that variety is really the exception. It's the dinner, it's not the usual thing. So from a habits perspective, when we're thinking about nutrition, especially when we're using the at least foods that our children really, really like, and we are teaching them inadvertently that the foods that they want are the ones that we're going to give them most of the time, what that does is teach them the habit of monotony. But it also teaches other habits, like Mom and Dad don't fight with me about what to eat at breakfast and lunch, but they really do fight with me what I'm gonna eat for dinner. And so when I come to the dinner table, I'm already ready for the fight. And so if we were to turn this around and stop thinking about nutrition and start thinking about habits, the thing that we would do would be to consciously and deliberately teach the concept of variety. The same thing is true if we want to think about the habits of proportion and moderation. So with proportion, instead of feeding our kids mostly from the child-friendly pool, we would start making sure that we gave them more of the truly healthy foods. And one easy way to do that is to just integrate fruits and vegetables throughout the day for breakfast, snack, every time we're sort of feeding our kids, giving them more of those foods. For moderation, if we were thinking about that habit, we would stop using the 2 more bites tango, you know the one, you have to eat 2 more bites before you can finish. We would stop bribing our kids with dessert in order to get them to eat more. We would stop feeding them brownies when they had boo-boos and stuff like that. So the key here is to just switch the mindset, think about habits before nutrition. It doesn't mean nutrition goes away, it just means it sort of takes the back seat for a little while. Next month, I'll be back to talk about how to introduce new foods. Specifically, I'll be talking about the rotation rule, a technique to get you started. Till next time, I'm Dina Rose. Hope to see you then.